The movie is set at around 895 AD. King Aurvandil with his brother Fjolnir returns back to his kingdom after victory in the war and everyone welcomes him. He then meets with his wife Gudrun and son Ameleth. She asks him about his brother Fjolnir and the king tells her that soon he will join them. Aurvandil then takes out a locket from the treasure which he brought with him and gives it to Ameleth. Later Fjolnir also arrives there and meets with his son Thori after the death of his wife. His son is everything to him. He is very powerful and merciless and he has fought alongside his brother in many wars. At night King Aurvandil tells his wife that he is injured badly and has decided to name his son as his successor of the throne, but her wife tells him that Ameleth is just a child and if he wants his son to be a successor then first he has to kill his brother because she feared Ameleth's brother might kill his son, who is immature and weak. The king then take Ameleth to the spiritual ceremony which is a worshipping place of the Vikings. Aurvandil tells him that his father also brought him here and now he is bring his son. There is already a priest there and he tells them that they have to prove if they are wolves or dogs. The king starts to behave like a wolf and so does Ameleth. Then a ritual is performed and Ameleth starts to see some strange visions. He sees the tree of the kings and his father in one of its branches. The next morning after the ritual is complete, they leave the temple, but at the same time Fjolnir also comes there and attacks them. The king tells Ameleth to run from there and he runs away. While the king is fighting from the distance, Ameleth sees his uncle Fjolnir killing his father and after killing the king Fjolnir sends his men after Ameleth. One of them captures him but Ameleth manages to injure him and comes back to his kingdom. He sees that Fjolnir has taken over of everything and his mother is now his slave. Later the man whom Ameleth injured comes there and lies to Fjolnir. He tells him that Ameleth drowned in the sea. Meanwhile Ameleth gets on a boat and leaves his father's kingdom. He vows to avenge his father's death and one day he will return to free his mother. A few years have passed after this incident and Ameleth is all grown up now. He was once a small immature and a weak child but now he is a formidable warrior. Together with his fellow men, Ameleth attacks a tribe and after defeating their warriors they take the surviving people as slaves. He sees the destruction his fellow men have caused and remembers his past. Later at night he sees a fox circling around a house. He enters in it and encounters a woman with magical powers who has no eyes. She recognizes Ameleth and tells him that Fjolnir's son Thur has taken her eyes and he must remember his vow and go back to where he belongs. The next day, Ameleth discovers that some of the slaves are going to Fjolnir's farm in Iceland. After hearing this, Ameleth changes his appearance and gives himself mark of the slaves. He then gets on a boat which is going to Iceland, and in it he meets with Olga, who claims to be sorceress. At night their boat is hit with a storm and Olga is about to fall, but Ameleth saves her. Somehow they have survived the storm and reached on an island where they were quickly taken in by Fjolnir's men. They pass through treacherous mountains and valleys. While walking, Olga tells Ameleth that she knows he is not a slave and he is here for a purpose. Now Ameleth tells her everything and he wants to take revenge. Scene shift and we see they reached at Fjolnir's farm and Fjolnir along with his sons comes there. He doesn't recognize Ameleth, but he got his attention and Fjolnir takes him as his slave along with Olga. Now Ameleth is forced to do hard labor and one day he manages to enter in his mother's room and see her with Fjolnir. He becomes sad and decides to free her at all cost. Later at night, Ameleth see a fox and start following it, which brings him at a cave. He then enters in it and see a priest who is in a trance-like state. The priest tells him that he knows he is the son of King Aurvandil and he is here to avenge his father. He then tells Ameleth about a sword called Dagger, which is forged by the deadliest warsmiths and also tells him about its location. Ameleth then goes to a place where the sword is located and we see a mummy of an old king holding the sword, and when Ameleth tries to take the sword, the mummy becomes alive and attacks him. Ameleth being a warrior fights with it and attacks it furiously. He finally manages to defeat it, but then comes back to his senses and realizes that the mummy is still there holding the sword. This whole fight was just him hallucinating. He then takes the sword and the mummy breaks into pieces. He then comes back to the farm and hides the sword. The next day Ameleth tells Olga that soon he will kill Fjolnir and free everyone. Later, Ameleth, together with others, are taken to somewhere for the chieftains' feast, where they play a dangerous game with the other chieftains' team. In this game anything can happen and a time comes when Ameleth's team is about to lose the game. Seeing this, Ameleth's half-brother Gunnar enters in the game. Fjolnir and his wife, together with other chieftain, screams to stop the game. The other team's player is about to kill him, but Ameleth saves him and they also win the game. At night, Thur tells Ameleth that because he saved his brother's life, as a reward for his bravery, he will now have the freedom to work less, command other slave and can choose his own women and can even choose Olga. And at night the Ameleth and Olga get intimate in the deep forest. Ameleth then kills close companions of Thur. The next morning Thur discovers that someone has killed his friends. He thinks that the Christian slaves have done this. But suddenly Fjolnir's high priest comes there. He tells them that this is a work of an evil spirit which is carrying a magical sword and they must do a sacrifice to god of protection. Later at night when they are about to sacrifice a slave they hear howls. Fjolnir's dog barking because Ameleth had provoked them. The dog then attacks Fjolnir but Fjolnir kills them. Taking advantage of the situation, Ameleth enters the temple and saves the girl and ties the priest and sacrifice him instead. Later when Fjolnir comes to see his priest he is shocked to discover that someone has sacrificed the priest. The next day Fjolnir tells Ameleth along with other slaves to guard the farm. Later at night Olga puts poisonous mushrooms in their food and after having dinner Fjolnir's men start killing themselves. Taking advantage of the situation, Ameleth sneaks in his mother's room. He tells her that he is her son Ameleth and he is here to avenge his father. Tomorrow he will kill his uncle and free her. She tells him that she never mourned his father because she was once his father's slave and show him the mark of the slaves. His father only endured her because she bore him a son yet his uncle loved her. She tells him that she was the one who begged Fjolnir to kill his father and him so that this day would never come. Ameleth is shocked to hear all this and leaves from there. He then kills Thur in his sleep and takes his heart and then goes to Olga. He tells her about his mother's reality and whatever happens tomorrow she should be ready to run. He then leaves to the hills. The next morning Fjolnir discovers the dead body of Thur with his heart missing and it breaks him. His wife tells him that it is Ameleth who has killed Thur and took his heart and he must kill him with his own hands. He then starts killing the slaves who he thinks have helped Ameleth and discovers that Olga have helped him, but before he kills her, Ameleth comes there and all of them attacks him. Olga runs from there just as they have planned. Ameleth fights bravely but they are able to capture him and took him to the prison. He asks him about Thur's heart but Ameleth refuses to tell him, which makes Fjolnir angry and he starts beating him. He wants to kill Ameleth but first he has to attend his son's funeral and just as he left a group of ravens come there and they free Ameleth. Later, when Fjolnir returns to prison he finds out that Ameleth is not there. In fact it was Olga who came back for Ameleth and save him from Fjolnir. Ameleth then decides to leave his past behind and start a new life with Olga. They then get on a boat and start their journey. Later Ameleth discovers that Olga is pregnant and now he decides to end Fjolnir because if he discovers about them then he will come after his child to avenge his son. He then gives a man his ring and tells him to take Olga to somewhere safe. Despite Olga's best effort to tell him not to go, he jumps in the water and head to Fjolnir's kingdom. Later he reaches Fjolnir's farm and one by one kills his men. But we see Fjolnir has discovered that Ameleth has returned. He tells his wife to take care of their son and he goes after Ameleth. Ameleth free all the slaves and then enters in Fjolnir's room, but to his surprise, his mother attacks him and while trying to save himself Ameleth unintentionally kills her. Then his half-brother starts stabbing him but he also meets with Ameleth's sword. Fjolnir also comes there and see his wife and son's bodies laying on floor. He tells Ameleth to meet him at the gates of hell, and then he takes his wife and son's bodies. The next day while coming to the gates of hell Ameleth see his mother and brother's bodies. He gives them his farewell and then start calling Fjolnir. They both start fighting in an active volcano. Fjolnir fights furiously and at first it seems that he has an upper hand. He then injures Ameleth's arm and is about to kill him. Ameleth is now exhausted but with all of his force he swipes his sword and cuts Fjolnir's head. Ameleth then falls on ground. He is heavily wounded, but he see the vision of Olga giving birth to twins. His lineage continues and then we see Valkyrie coming to get him and the movie ends. I hope you enjoyed the explanation. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did.